Assalamualaikum and good day, everyone. My name is RAZIFF JAMALUDIN. I'm the president for Tourism Educators Association of Malaysia. Before I begin my talk, I would like to wish everyone here Happy World Tourism Day 2021. And my topic for today will be reshaping the focus in future tourism product and market segmentation. Before we dive further into the topic that I would like to discuss, let us just try to refresh what happened before in 2019. We can see that Malaysia had once ranked number 9. So we are one of the leading destination in the world for tourism. And then we are top in the form of medical tourism as well as shopping. And when the industry or the country would like to look into the example of the Muslim destination, they always refer to Malaysia. And we also have this kind of tagline, Malaysia to Asia. So because of that, in 2020, so we have this kind of campaign, we call it as Visit Malaysia 2020, where because of that, the industry players are so optimistic. So they have come out with lots of plan and they have acquired asset and system, and some of them already committed to this business expansion because of this coming year in 2020. If let's say this Visit Malaysia 2020 were to happen, and we can see that they can get slightly quickly return on investment, and that's one of the reasons why they have done lots of promotional activities, or they have committed with these promotional activities or campaign because of this kind of optimism, you know. And then in 2020, this is one of the unprecedented crisis that ever happened to all of us, especially in the tourism industry, where there is no international travel, something that we haven't imagined before, and deals had to be cancelled, and there are lots of committed budget that cannot be used anymore, and the industry has to serve that, even though there's no business for them to recover all the debts. And we can see that this last year is something that is a really negative impact to all of us. So that's why we have to, we need to continue doing what we are doing right now, but we pray for the best so that this thing would be over very soon. And now we are in 2021, and again the similar things happen, prolong until this year, where there's still no international travelers. And in fact, to make things worse, there's no domestic tourism in 2021 up until now. Not to say the whole year, but since this movement control order 3.0, and the industry can only, they have lost more than 80% for this year. And we can see another, not to say another round, there are additional players have to cease operation because of this, negative impact to this tourism industry. So that's why there are several headlines last year that you can see something like this. It's really sad to see that many operators have to cease operation because of the pandemic, and then the lockdown had to be extended because of the safety of people. So that's why we cannot say that we want this to, we want to activate the industry, but somehow we also have to look into the safety of people, right? So that's why in 2020, I would say that this is the year of adversity. Even though we have active tourism industry in the beginning of the year, even though the pandemic already occurred during that time, but the somehow the industry managed to attract about 4.25 million people. And when the pandemic happened, so we have to rely so much on this public driven policy, where we look into government, we look into the new announcement, especially in the budget. Why? Because of the government will allocate certain figures to the industry, but usually the figures were allocated based on the tax allocation or tax paid by the industry players, or tax generated or collected from the industry itself, from industry players. So that's why last year is not really a good year to all of us, right? So that's why the allocation is very small, because of we are not one of the active industry that generated or contributed to the tax for the national, for the nation. Okay, so that's why now we are in 2021. So we are coming towards the final quarter or the fourth quarter of the year. So what will be the budget allocation for us next year? So this is something I think quite interesting for us to discuss now. Okay, when we talk about this, we have to understand the total number, the total amount of revenues generated by tourism industry in 2021 until now. Or we can say that until June or until September. And I would say because due to the COVID-19, due to the MCO 2.0, and there's not so much revenues generated that we can contribute back to the tax. And then we have also, maybe we can look into other industries, how much the revenue is generated by the economy as a whole in 2021 that can also allocated not only for that particular industry but also to the other industries, because of sometimes the government can also help, channel fund to several industries to help to assist the industry to survive or to sustain for an additional for another year, because maybe this year or next year we have to survive this pandemic, or maybe there will be another lockdown. We are not sure about what will happen in the future, right? And but somehow what we need for the time being in the moment, so we have to, when we want to do a prediction or projection about future, we must get the data to support our prediction. So that's why in order for us to get this case prediction, is there any support, so is there any empirical figures that can assist us? So that's why I would say that coming 2022, so we have to again go for a pessimistic approach, because we are not sure whether the domestic industry can survive, but we hope that we can have active domestic tourism so that the place can survive for another year, at least before we can start opening the border to the international tourists. Okay, but before I continue with the discussion, so I would like everybody here to look into GDP, the gross domestic product of the national. What is GDP? So GDP is the economic indicators that summarize the value of goods and services produced in the country within the year. So that's why when you look at the tourism industry, so we have to understand the tourism activities. For example, we need to understand the standard or the contribution of the tourism industries to the economy. So how we generate the GDP? So it is generated based on the survey method at the entry or departure cards, or maybe we the government or Department of Statistical using this kind of estimation methods based on the average daily expenditure to several industries, so that they can come up with aggregate um, revenues for the industry per se. So coming to the discussion that I mentioned just now, so we have to use this pessimistic approach, or we can see that we have to look into this what the government allocate to the industry before we can really see what will happen next. Okay, like last year, so there are several headlines that you can see. The allocation is not really up to the amount that the industry feel it should be getting. And then this year, again, you can see that the industry started to feel more optimistic, and there are several initiatives, for example, like Sabah Tourism Board, keen to promote places of worship for tourism, and Thailand expect to fully reopen by next year. And then Malaysia already start this, interstate travel bubble. Okay, so we want to have more, this positive uh, environment for this tourism industry. We want to activate again the industry. Okay, so there are several data that I collected from the statistics, and then I'd like to share with all of you here. For example, when we look into the domestic market, domestic tourism industry here in Malaysia, so we can see that, let us try to discuss on the performance in 2019, because that will be the level that we want to achieve after this pandemic is over. So you can see from the map here. So the blue color denote the highest number of domestic visitors. So that is the hotspot. So where the domestic visitors came from. So we can see that. So this about 50% out of total domestic tourism came from these 6 countries: Selangor, Kuala Lumpur, Sarawak, Sabah, Pahang, and Perak. And for the tourism receipts, the hotspot where the tourism activities are, active. Here you can see the dark color represent the states with highest tourism receipts, or we can see indirectly mentioned, you know, the what you call it, the hotspots for tourism activities. And these are the countries. So these are the states, about 9 states which are really active. So these 9 states, contributed about 70% out of the combined tourism receipts of the domestic tourism. So that's why I would say that when we want to look into this prediction of future domestic tourism activities, so we have to look what best for us to offer, what kind of policy that we want to initiate. Okay, and for the hotspot and potential travel bubble, so we can see the number here. So the darker the color, meaning that is the hotspot for this COVID-19 cases. And when you look into this, there are several countries yet to hit the 100 million, the 100,000 mark for the COVID-19 cases, which are these 5 countries: Pahang, Perak, Melaka, Terengganu, Kelantan, and Perlis. So you can see there, if let's say the government would like to have this future travel bubble between states, interstate traveling, and these are maybe potential. For example, you can see there are the east coast of Malaysia is one of the maybe the first zone that the government can start with this travel bubble, or they already started with Langkawi, but they can extend it to Langkawi to east coast Malaysia. And also we can start with Georgetown and Langkawi, because of these islands, as well as, like, for example, like Georgetown, they have this international flight from, for example, from Hong Kong, from China, from Indonesia, Thailand, and Singapore. So they can have this kind of travel bubble with regional countries, so that we can reactivate the international traveling. And this was my prediction back in November 2020, last year. So I presented this with in one of the conference, and the prediction goes south, but somehow, because of I haven't anticipated this MCO 3.0. And if let's say now I would like to, if I were to predict one more time for next year, I would say this could be my prediction, taking into account MCO 3.0, and also the herd immunity, if we can achieve this by the beginning of next quarter or in the middle of next quarter. And we hope that by end of the year, it is safe for us to travel, even though the cases are quite high at the moment. But I hope that we can see the Malaysia can open to border tourism by second quarter, or maybe before the third quarter. So from the beginning of 2022 until the third quarter, this is the critical period for the tourism industry, because the performance of the industry during this period will define the future allocation of tax. So that's why I would say that we need to really, go all out, or we have to holding hand for the tourism industry or tourism players. Because why? Because of there will be a new budget announcement by the government. So we hope to see more funds will be channeled to the industry to uplift the tourism industry. And we hope by 2023, the industry can fully restart. Okay, but somehow we also have to rely on the assumptions. For example, if let's say we can achieve this, if we have the data and we analyze the data, or with an additional SOP or policy, and we have to assess that on a monthly basis. So that's why whenever we have a new policy, at the end of maybe we give like 1 week to 1 month, and then we have to assess. So we need the data, or the team to assess the data. And then the government also need to have the agreement or partnership or memorandum of understanding with border countries like Singapore, Thailand, and Indonesia, because I would say that the country needs to restart the regional traveling by the second quarter, and we hope by November the government will announce PPN phase 4 so that people can do interstate traveling. And we also have to take into account the moratorium extension by another 3 to 6 months, because like last year, why we can see that the industry can get, have a good performance, good domestic performance last year because of this moratorium. So happened that when the government allow the domestic traveling, people are still in this moratorium period. So that's why I would say that if let's say this moratorium will end about December or January next year, so we hope that if let's say the government can extend it, then we can also, this can benefit the tourism industry. And we look into the international traveling. So this color denote the highest travelers that come to Malaysia, and we relied so much. Not only we, but most of the countries in the world relied so much on the countries that close to their to our country. For example, like this, you can see that top 10 countries in the world that come to Malaysia came from these countries. Like Singapore, Indonesia, China, Thailand, Brunei, India, South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, and also Vietnam. From there, we can analyze more about this. When we look into the data, we can see that almost 70% of the travelers that came into Malaysia, come from ASEAN countries, and almost 40% of the travelers came from Singapore. And these 4 countries, China, India, South Korea, and Japan, contributed about 20% of the inbound tourism to Malaysia. And if you combine these 3 countries, Singapore, Indonesia, and China, the top 3 countries, so these 3 accounted for almost 65% of the travelers into Malaysia. So from this, you can say that if the country were to have a future travel bubble or the reciprocal win-win, so we can establish these countries that I mentioned just now. And we look into the activities by the travelers. We can see that the green color are the major activities that that they did while they are in Malaysia. And if we take out this, we can see that most of the inbound tourism activity concentrated on urban and lifestyle. You can see here about 3/4 of the activities concentrated on urban and lifestyle. Okay, so that's why I would say that we have to strengthen macro to optimize micro. So it is important for the government to have solid policy. First of all, the government needs to solve internal problems, because we can see that the government for the day is quite vulnerable. So it is important for the government to solve the internal problems, for them to come up with clear and direct communication tools and avenue, because at the end of the day, so we need a clear short-term policy in reviving the tourism industry in Malaysia, at least from 2022 until 2024. And we must have the clear strategies for this confined marketplace. Okay, so that's why we need to identify that. We need to define the confined marketplace. So that's why it is important for us to understand the market, customer, product, or brand, and also the actors or the entities which are vital for the tourism industry, like the local council agencies, all the financial intermediaries, communities, as well as the NGO, and all the industries, not only the tourism industries, but also the support industries that can also help us, that can also be vital, critical for us to come up with, solid products. And if we can have, like today we discussed in this World Tourism Day, we discussed about the future of this tourism. But now, let's see, we know that from this fourth quarter until next first quarter, at the end of next year, first quarter, so we are maybe we can only concentrate it on confined marketplace. Okay, and then starting from the first quarter, we have to find ways to offer, this to open the border for these three countries, and then starting from the second quarter, so we can start open the border to ASEAN countries, and then starting from the third quarter, so we have to start thinking of what best for us to have to attract people from these four countries. Remember just now I mentioned about the 10 top countries that make up 70% of the inbound travelers in Malaysia. And next year in 2022, in 20, September 27, so we can discuss again what had happened. So the progress of the tourism industry for the past 1 year. So we hope that everybody here can again have this kind of webinar, or maybe we can have face-to-face interaction to discuss about the progress of the industry for the past 1 year. And we hope that next year will be substantial development of fund allocated to the tourism industry by the government to uplift the tourism industry, and we can have fully restart in 2023. So the key decision factors for this to happen is that we must identify the value proposition. So we need to assess the existing products for us to, improve it. And for us, maybe we can think of the best way to offer for the people who really concern or emphasize on safety or security. And also we need to understand the motive of travel post-pandemic. Okay. And finally, we need to understand the segment that come to Malaysia after this pandemic. Okay. So we have the data already, actually. But now, what is for us to, put everything in the equation so that we can come up with solid product that we can offer to this market, key markets. And then on top of that, we also must make sure that we have sufficient workforce. So the industry must create jobs to these people, especially to laid off, to the graduates, so that we can have, a new environment. And then one of the most important thing is to come up with new information. To solid information. So we need to strengthen the social media and also need to come up with regular updates. So that's why it is important for us to identify the what you call it, people who can give positive reviews to us, celebrity, media endorser, or the influencer. Okay, and then the SOP, we must come up with solid SOP that if we can comply with international standard and guidelines. For example, like even though there are many standard guidelines, but we have to adhere at least to WHO. That is the most important thing. And finally, we have to also assess. We must have accessibility. So the short and medium haul flight must be there for us to, attract people to come to Malaysia. And the most important thing is to come up with package or maybe attractive fares so that people will come. So that's why I would say that the role of the government or the role of the macro policy is important for us to come up with the whole strategies that I mentioned here. And before I end up my discussion today, I would say that for the future destination positioning to Malaysia, so we have to look into sustainability because we must come up with proper planning and control. So we don't want to again, go through like what we have gone through last year. So we need to have proper control because we want to minimize the risk to people, not now to Malaysia, but in the future when the international border is reopened, then we have to minimize risk to all travelers. And in order to do that, maybe we can start thinking of how can we come up with these long staycation products. And next is this happiness index. So we have to look into different statistics or different KPI. For example, like can we come up with a new KPI in terms of, we cannot just simply look into tourist arrivals, the number of tourist arrivals. Maybe we can start thinking of a new equation that can derive destination lifetime value, or we also have to look into growth of the local industry or community-based industry, and also the revenue generation. This is important. So we have to come out. So we need to understand the real GDP value. So we need to have the internal measurement. Sometimes we always rely on the equation get proposed by the West, especially by the United Nations or UNWTO. But somehow we also need to come up with our own interpretation of the GDP. But the most important thing here for today, we need to come up with a regulated marketplace. So this is the right time for us to regulate the market. Maybe in the future we can unregulate the market, but somehow, if actually the government want to give grant, industry grant, or soft loan to the industry, so we must make sure that all of them must go through proper licensing. So they need to have proper structure and good business plan or sound business plan before they can really, they are eligible for this uh, grant or soft loan. With that, I conclude my presentation. Oh, this could be one before I end my session today, and this will define the tourism success to all of us. And with that, I thank you. Uh, Thank you for the opportunities to present to all of you, and I wish everybody here, the industry players, very best of luck. And I pray that the industry will recover soon, and all of us will have a very positive, tourism industry. And take care, stay safe, everyone, and see you in the future. Bye.